If this is progress, then we're doomed. How's everybody doing? My name is Anthony Brian Logan, and today we got to talk about the city of Newark, New Jersey, unveiling a 700-pound bronze statue of George Floyd right outside the city hall. Now, I don't really know what the purpose of this is. I mean, why would you want to honor this guy? I mean, what did he really give to the world? Was he like Martin Luther King? Maybe even the Malcolm X? Did he have some kind of riveting speeches? Did he empower people to become better in their lives when he was living on a large scale or even on a small scale? Is that what he did? I'm not really sure. But before I go any further into my opinion about it, let's go ahead and roll this news clip. In the clip, you're going to see the statue. You're going to see the little celebration that was around it, and you'll hear a little bit more detail about it. After we get done watching that, I'll come back. Then I'll give you the rest of my 2 cents, my deep, detailed analysis, and then I'll wrap it on up with a nice bow on top. So without further ado, let's go ahead and roll it.
A bronze statue of George Floyd now stands outside City Hall in Newark, put there today to honor the life of Floyd, the man whose death elevated the Black Lives Matter movement. The installation also commemorates Juneteenth, which is Saturday. The statue will stay there for at least a year.
All right, so you saw that, you heard that. Now, this is ridiculous. A 700-pound bronze statue right outside the, the City Hall? And they're talking about, it's going to coincide with Juneteenth. Man, oh man. I'm going to talk about that right quick first. Before I get into George Floyd and why the statue shouldn't be there, let's talk about how Juneteenth has now become this kind of commercial holiday. They're trying to like Christmas-ize Juneteenth. And I don't like that personally. Now, Juneteenth is a day that we should know about, but it shouldn't be this weaponized thing that's used to attack people and is used to promote certain narratives. I don't want George Floyd to be attached to Juneteenth. I don't want any kind of corporate interest to be attached to Juneteenth. I don't want the political people to attach themselves onto Juneteenth at all. That's just how I'm looking at it. Now, a brief history of Juneteenth before I move right along. Juneteenth, June 19th, 1865. That's when Union soldiers came to Galveston, Texas to inform them that slavery was over, to inform the slaves, slave masters, everybody that slavery was over. And it had been over since January 1st, 1863, a full 2.5 years later. So that day became celebrated in Galveston, then around the rest of Texas, and then across the U.S. among the black community as a symbolic reference for the end of slavery. Now, if you watch the news, they'll say that's when slavery ended. That's not true. Slavery did not end in the U.S. under federal law until December of 1865. And I think 6 months later, when you're talking about under the native law, like among the native population and their federations or whatever they had, because they still had black slaves. As a matter of fact, they brought black slaves with them on the Trail of Tears, but that's a different story, and I digress. The whole point is that Juneteenth is a date that should be known in history, but should it be commercialized? Should it be associated with people like George Floyd? Should it be a thing that these left-wing politicals want to use as a weapon against the right? I don't think so. And it also should not be named Juneteenth, National Independence Day. That's very confusing. There's one Independence Day, that's July 4th, 1776, not June 19th, 1865, but we'll move right along. George Floyd. This man is nobody to look up to. Regardless of what you think, you could think that he was killed by police and it was unjust and the guy should burn for eternity for doing it. You could think that George Floyd died of a drug overdose. Whatever you believe is not even really relevant. What was George Floyd while he was living? Was he the equivalent to Martin Luther King Jr., who, by the way, was not perfect, and we all know it because MLK had his little philandering ways. His wife was cool with it, but if you're a Christian pastor and you're out here doing whatever you're doing, that's not really the wave all the way. And also, a lot of the so-called protests that he would encourage were full of violence, he would say that, hey, let's do nonviolent stuff. He would preach for nonviolence, although a lot of the protests in his honor were violent. And then when he died, it was a crazy situation, a lot of riots all over the nation. But like I said, imperfect, although he had a great message. You know, content of the character, not color of the skin. You know, just really good things. He was an agent of change, of positive change, not this whole critical race theory, everybody's a racist change. Malcolm X, same thing, also imperfect. You know, Detroit Red, pimping, getting locked up. But then when he came out and he was dealing with the Nation of Islam, he brought a lot of black men up from the gutter and into a more respectable way of life. Okay, have a statue for Malcolm X, have a statue for Martin Luther King and guys of that nature. Have a statue for George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, also imperfect, slave owners or whatever, but great men. The nation's founders, founding fathers, have statues for these men, have statues for people that actually make a difference in society in a positive way, not for George Floyd. The only thing that George Floyd did, and I'm just being 1,000% honest here, not to insult the man, I'm just being honest. The only thing that George Floyd did was die. As a matter of fact, his girlfriend at the time, ex-girlfriend or whatever, she thanked George Floyd for dying, as did Nancy Pelosi.
I know he gave his life so this could happen.
Thank you, George Floyd, for sacrificing your life for justice.
They said it. I didn't say it. They said it. Thank you for dying, because without your death, basically, we wouldn't be able to get done what we got going on right now. Now, another question I have, another concern I have about the George Floyd statue being in Newark is, isn't he from Texas or North Carolina? Because I think there might have been 2 or 3 funeral services for George Floyd when he died. There was one in Houston, because that's where he lived most of the time, in Houston. And then I think it was one in North Carolina, because he may have been born in North Carolina. And there may have been one in Minneapolis where he died. So Minnesota, Texas, North Carolina. What's it got to do with New Jersey? Why is there a 700-pound bronze statue of George Floyd in Newark, New Jersey? And why is it going to be there for a year? And why are you trying to tie Juneteenth into it? It just seems kind of woke, kind of stupid. You got the mayor out there, Ross Baraka, doing this. For what reason? The crime in Newark is not going to go down as a result. The education won't get any better in Newark as a result. It's just symbolic, unnecessary, and it won't get anything done. If anything, it'll kind of be a reference point for people to say, well, I can do whatever I want. I don't have to, submit to arrest. And hey, you know what? If I die, if I pass away in police custody, maybe there might be some money involved from my family. That is the message that it sends, in my humble opinion. I'm not saying he deserved or whatever. I'm not saying nothing like that. I'm just saying, what are you saying to people, to kids especially, that see that statue? What's your message to these kids? Not a very good one. You know what? This also reminds me of what Mark Zuckerberg did for Newark, New Jersey. I always tell this story, and it kind of underlines how a lot of these democratic cities are failing in their policies and things that they do in general. Okay, Mark Zuckerberg donated $100 million to Newark public schools, $100 million cash, if not more. If I'm wrong about that, let me know in the comments. But $100 million he donated, and there was a follow-up to this donation. Okay, where did $100 million go? How did it help? Did it improve anything? And there was a source from within the school system out there in Newark, not me quoting it, I'm just saying what this person said, and I'll link to my source in the box so you can read it for yourself. But they said something like, all the contractors got paid, all the consultants got paid, but Raheem still can't read. So what's the point? You're giving all this money, you're doing all these empty symbolic gestures for what? The crime is still crazy. These kids in these poor communities still can't read. All the usual suspects, they're getting their money, they're getting their piece of the pie, they're getting their time in the limelight, 15 minutes of fame, all this, that, and the third. But the core problems that exist in Newark and in Minneapolis and in Houston and in Carolina or whatever George Floyd had his funeral at, all these problems still exist. You want to uplift this man. You want to highlight this man for what? If you want to change hearts and change minds by using people and their story, talk about people that have actually done things that are positive in this world, not just those that died, that Democrats thank for dying because they're able to get their particular policies through. All right. But I think I'll leave that right there for now. And what say you? How do you feel about the 700-pound bronze statue of George Floyd being placed right there outside of the City Hall in Newark, New Jersey? Whatever your thoughts on that are, let me know in the comments below. Is it a good thing, bad thing? Let me know. You guys know where I'm at with it. I think that it's unnecessary. It's an empty gesture. It won't help at all in a positive way. If anything, it'll help in a negative way. It'll help some of these kids and adults, quite frankly, to think that they could just do whatever they want. They're above the law. They can just exist beyond a civilized society like how they think George Floyd did. Because like I said, regardless of what you think about George Floyd, whether he was on drugs, it was an overdose, whether the police killed him, we all know that he was not doing right. We all know that. There's nobody that really can deny that. You had drugs and you using the fake bills. You already had a record. He was not doing right. So do you think that he could just do whatever he want and not get touched? Or is there a law and order that went a little bit too overboard? Did he not go overboard? Those things are less important than the symbolism of having George Floyd out there as some kind of martyr. And at a certain point, isn't this kind of like idolatry? I hear a lot of people that are religious talk about George Floyd in a positive way, and they talk about this in a positive way as well. I'm having a hard time understanding how that makes any sense. I'm just really struggling with the concept of having a 700-pound bronze statue of George Floyd in Newark and how this could affect the community in any kind of way positive. If anything, I see negativity or just nothing coming from this. But whatever your thoughts are, please let me know in the comments below. And that's all I got to say for this video. If you like what you heard, please comment, rate, share, and subscribe. Peace.